Father God, without your precious love from heaven of your Son Jesus, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't even know what life's about. Christmas would mean nothing. It would mean nothing. So God, thank you for all you've done for us and what you're going to do. Thank you for the Jeremy who has God who will teach us, Lord, of the Holy Spirit this morning. Help us, God, to live what we learn. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Job chapter 3. We're gonna skip over a little part of Job 2. We didn't get to last week. Job 2:11 through 14 is the introduction to his friends. His friends arrive on the scene, and it begins a passage basically from there through to chapter 38, where there's this debate about why these things have happened. And Lord willing, we'll have some things to say next week about Job's friends, and that'll continue for a little bit as we look at this debate. But this morning we're going to look at Job chapter 3, which I believe is one of the darkest passages in all of Scripture, if not the darkest. In fact, as I looked over the last couple of weeks, and I began to look at different people's commentaries and different people's lessons and different, you can't imagine how many of them just jump over chapter 3. This is usually the picture of chapter 3. Job's friends arrive in chapter 2, verses 11, and what happens, Justin, is it'll say this little blip about, and so they sat for 7 days in silence, and then Job breaks the silence, chapter 3, and now let's go on to chapter 4 and look at what the friends have to say. And you'll see in a few minutes why it's so often skipped over. And Doug will tell you, guess what I wanted to do? Yeah, I wanted to skip right over it. We're going to read it this morning. If you've read it before, you'll understand. Imagine reading this every single day for 7 days. Imagine thinking about this all the time. This is not a happy picture. Psalm 88, maybe Ecclesiastes, Jeremiah 20, which is basically just this exact picture. I think those might be parallel passages that are as dark, but that's about it. I mean, this is a very dark passage. So why would we look at it? Why didn't we skip over it? Because Doug kept trying to figure out a reason why I could justify skipping over it. In the back of my head, it just says all Scripture. It's infallible. It's inerrant. It is the Word of God. It is therefore profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for instruction, for correction. I mean, it has. There's a reason. And then as I began to look at it, Justin, I started thinking this way. You know what? I would prefer to learn my lesson from Job chapter 3 rather than have to live Job chapter 3. And I began to, maybe this is a really good thing. And then Miss Brucci, then I started feeling bad. Because what, am I trying to avoid persecution? Don't I know that I serve a suffering, persecuted Savior? Okay, I know that. And I know that they're like 1 Peter tells me I should rejoice in the fact that I get to be a partaker with him. Philippians Chapter 3 says that I'm going to fellowship in his sufferings. Matthew, Mark, they all talk about, deny yourself, take up your cross. That is such a nice, easy lesson to teach until you actually spend a little time when he talks about taking up your cross. Take on this instrument of pain and suffering and death. That meant a completely different thing to those who heard in the first century than it means to us. I mean, that is a picture. Take up your cross. Remember it? That's yours. I know these things, and then I looked and I found this one, and I like this one because at least it gives me a little comfort. Ben, you got 2 Corinthians 1:5? Please. 2 Corinthians 1:5 is great because although it talks about there's going to be multitude of suffering, it also tells us this. For as the sufferings of Christ abound in us, sufferings will abound. At least this one gives me a little bit of a snapshot. So our consolation also aboundeth by Christ. Okay, so it starts to get a little bit better. I know there's going to be suffering. I know there's going to be trial. I know there's going to be challenge. But bless God. This just now starting to sound like a good lesson. Bless God. He'll be there and he'll be faithful. And he'll give me everything I need to go through. And this is usually where we would jump over chapter 3 of Job. Because Job doesn't exactly have that view. After reading this, and we're going to try to read the whole chapter in Job right here in chapter 3. Not the same Job of chapter 2, not the same Job of chapter 1. We're going to see Job very, very dark. And so we're looking at this chapter. To me, it's kind of like, Brother Bill, you're talking about flying. Okay, here. For me, this verse is kind of like the life vest underneath the seat. You know, I hope I never need it. I can't even imagine what circumstances it's going to be good for. I'm going to crash from 33,000 feet at 500 miles an hour, and I need a life vest. But somehow, I'm glad it's there. Because that really is the picture of this chapter for me. And so let's go ahead and start reading it. Job chapter 3, we'll begin in verse 1. After this opened Job his mouth and cursed his day. And this chapter is going to break into, for me, it's 3 sections. There's going to be a cursing, there's going to be a lament, and then there's a few verses at the end, which a lot of people just throw in and call as a lament. But preacher, I've listened to enough people lament. There's usually at the end of the lament, and on top of that, this. And so those last couple verses for me are like, and on top of that, this. And so we're going to read it that way because that's how it makes sense to me. After this, Job opened his mouth and cursed his day. And Job spake and said, let the day perish wherein I was born, and the night in which it was said, there is a man-child conceived. Let that day be darkness. Let not God regard it from above, neither let the light shine upon it. Let darkness and the shadow of death stain it. Let a cloud dwell upon it. Let the blackness of the day terrify it. Job not feeling too good. As for that night, let darkness seize upon it. Let it not be joined unto the days of the year. Let it not come unto the number of the months. Lo, let that night be solitary. Let no joyful voice come therein. Let them curse in that cursed day, the day, who are ready to raise up their mourning. The day I was born, you should not be celebrating the day I was born. That is not a happy day. Okay, at my birth, they should have mourned. They should have sackcloth and ashes. Not post on Facebook. This is not happy day, happy day. Let the stars of the twilight thereof be dark. Let it look for light, but have none. Neither let it see the dawning of the day. Because it shut not up the door of my mother's womb, nor hid sorrow from mine eyes. Job starts this chapter with a cursing. After this, Job opened his mouth and cursed his day. There's a couple things, because I want to get through this whole chapter in one day. I do not want to come back and look at this next week. But when we get this idea of cursing, first we've got to understand, this cursing is not cursing how we see it. Miss Cindy, usually when we think, and he cursed today, this is what we think. Some anger-laced tirade where he just couldn't handle it anymore, and he whipped out with his own wrath and anger to tell somebody and give him a piece of his mind. That's not what Job's doing. All right, keep in mind the things we've already looked at. Keep in mind what Job has been through. All the loss that he suffered, and more than that, he's been in physical pain. Now, if we jump over, we don't know how long, but if we jump over to Job chapter 7, verse 3, Job referenced this idea of 4 months. So, and Doug, I think that's probably accurate right here. It's probably been months, okay? By the time the friends see Job, they don't even recognize him. Okay, and this disease, it's progressive. It gets worse and worse and worse. And, you know, there had to be time for them to hear about it. There was no Facebook. Okay, there was no news. It had to travel. And anyone who would have traveled, it was dead. So it had to travel. They had to recognize it. They had to set their affairs in order. They had to travel. So for months, Job has been physically in torment. Now, this is one of the reasons why I don't like, studying the book of Job. Somebody had to ask me multiple times for me to break down and say yes. Because, preacher, we're looking at this passage, and here there's this concentration on Job's physically ill. And you know what happens when you start studying a passage? Way too often, whatever you're studying shows up in your life during that week. Okay, so studying the book of Job, with this cursing, what he's really doing is responding to this distress, this extreme distress that most of us will never understand. Thank you, Lord. But in this distress, and by the way, he's not the only one. If you go to Jeremiah chapter 20, which is 19, is where he's in the stocks, and he's released from the stocks. 20, I think it's after he goes home. He basically quotes this passage. It's like he memorized it. Okay, he's not the only one. He says the same thing. It's response to the place that he's at. And then you got to kind of look at exactly what he's saying. This is not some suicide rant. Okay, what he's saying is, like in verse 6, he says, it'd be better if I wasn't born. I don't even want this day to exist. Okay, that's I shouldn't be born. If there was no me, it would be better. Verse 3 talks about conception. He talks about his birth. You know, that's where, you know, on Facebook the picture goes out. Here, take a picture, plus or minus or whatever it is. It's been a long time. Take a picture, everybody can see. Yay! Birthday. Boom, here's the baby. Snap, 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 snap. You treat the poor kid like a Barbie doll, put him in all these different clothes as soon as he's born. Ah! We don't care what the company pictures. And we put him online so everybody can be happy. Dougie says, no, that's not my deal. He says, if being born was going to lead to this, it would be better that I was never born. This is just too much. You see, Job now is at a place where there's no joy, there's no hope, there's no relief. All there is pain and suffering and loss every day, all the time. No hope, crushing. And in this crushing, he says, it would be better that there was no me than a me has to go through this. Intense trials feel that way. They look that way. One of the things that we should get from the book of Job is we should learn to be sympathetic towards others. Amen. One of the things we're going to see when we start to look at the friends is it's too quick to jump in with rationalizations and judgments and condemnations and this is how it's supposed to be. What he needed was some compassion. And it's what they set out to do. I mean, we'll see when we start talking. The friends didn't set out to be bad friends. After all, they traveled to be there. And we put way too much static in the fact that they didn't say anything for 7 days. You know that's an Eastern custom not to speak until the one who's hurting speaks. Job speaks in chapter 3, and then they got lots to say. Probably wishes he would stay quiet. Intense trials should make us be sympathetic towards the place other people are in. Job right here is just saying, look at where I am. If you consider my life now with no hope, it would be better if there just wasn't a me. I'm stuck here in nothing and pain, and I don't see any way out. That's where Job is right here, as he paints the picture. Pain, suffering, and no hope of relief. Verses 11 through 19. Why died I not? Why died I not from the womb? Why did I not give up the ghost when I came out of the belly? Was I not stillborn? Why did the knees prevent me? Or why did the breast that I should suck? Why did you even nurture me? Why if I was trying to solve this pain himself, and that leads him to only one hope. Man's only hope for the problems of life is the freedom from life, because he can't control the life. Verse 19, the small and the great are there, and the servant is free. It doesn't matter rich or poor, king or prince, prisoner, small, baby, stillborn, aborted. It doesn't matter. There is freedom. There's rest. I'm tired. Only rest for me is death. I'm surrounded in darkness. I'm living in pain. I do want to show this. Doug, I said this in the beginning. I'm probably going to say it a bunch more times or until we end, which who knows when that will be. Hopefully soon. But I want to be very careful about making snapshot conclusions in the book of Job, because you can really get in trouble. I mean, you want to upset people, teach the book of Job. You want to really upset them, start making conclusions based off one verse in the middle of nowhere. You know where the conclusions from the book of Job come from? In the end. And for those conclusions to make sense, you know what you have to go through? The book of Job. So I want to be careful making snapshots, but also along the way, I want to not miss some of the things and some of the growth. Now, in this picture, Job really does not have a good view of what death is. Okay. In death is where the wicked rest. No, that's not true. And he kind of knows that's not true, but right now, all that he can see, and I want you to see, there is one of the things that grows in Job through this challenge is this exact picture and understanding of Job, of death. Job chapter 14, I don't know if I gave you these. Oh, I did. Job chapter 14, verses 14 through 15. If a man die, shall he live again? All the days of my appointed time will I wait till my change come. Give me the next one, Job 19. There should be two verses there. Anyway, that's good. And though my skin worms destroy this body, death. Brother Bill, you look, see, there's been some growth here. It's not just rest. Okay, then I'll be in the dirt with everybody else. No, there's some growth here. There's some growth by the time he gets to chapter 14. There's growth by the time he gets to chapter 19. Now his hope is not, my only rest is to be in with the dirt, to go to dirt, and to be like everybody else in the dirt. No, now, my rest is to see him. No, we're in chapter 3. That's chapter 14. That's chapter 19. There's a lot of stuff going on before we get to there. But one of the things that happens through this challenge, through this trial, is Job's vision, is Job's sight, is Job's list, is Job's viewpoint. Now, there are some things in here that aren't here. And it's very important what's not here. Because, Brother Hampton, we can take a look at this and people can say, oh, that's me. Well, before we say that's how we deal with it, let's notice some things he did not do. It's very interesting what Job did not do. Right here when he's talking to his friends, he does not list all the things he lost. Oh, none of that's in here. There is no list of I used to have and now it's gone, and what my kids and did you believe what my wife said to me, and all my security, and Rob, I've worked my whole life and look, all those things are gone. There's no list of why it's unfair. There's no cursing God. There's no after all I've done. There's no I deserve better. There's none of that. None of that is there. In fact, what happens, and what we'll begin to see as we go through the next couple of chapters, starting in chapter 4 and going on, is that this whole argument is, all right, if you're righteous, you're blessed, and if you're wicked, you're cursed. And Job doesn't necessarily even disagree with that. Okay, that's what his friends are saying. Job's problem is, I understand, I agree. But you're telling me, okay, I've sinned, so I'm wicked, and that's why this curse is happening. I'm telling you, I haven't sinned, I'm not wicked, but still this curse is here, and it makes no sense to me. Job is, in fact, you alluded to this last week, preacher. Job is stuck in the why. Why is this happening? It's about righteousness. It's about how things are working and how this thing works out. But when you look right here, Job is not wishing for the return of the good times. Eric, you got Job 29, 1 through 6. Okay. Moreover, Job continued his parable and said, "Oh, that I were in months past, as in the days when God preserved me." Notice what this is all about, Brother Bill. Okay, now this is week 14, 19, 29. Okay, it starts to make a little bit more sense. When his candle shined upon my head, and when by his light I walked through darkness, as I was in the days of my youth, when the secret of God was upon my tabernacle. Notice what all this is about. You know what he's longing for? He's longing for that relationship. When the Almighty was yet with me, when he was with me. You notice what the problem is? The problem is now, all the way back in 3, he's gone. Job's problem is he's read the tea leaves and he's read them wrong. Read the tea leaves, and this is happening because God's gone. And it makes no sense to me when the Almighty was yet with me, when my children were about me, when I washed my steps with butter, and the rocks poured me out rivers of oil. Job's struggle right here is I have no hope because God's not here. When I had blessings, I knew God was here. See what the danger of reading the tea leaves wrong? When I had the blessings, I knew God was here. Now the blessings are gone, so God must be gone. That means I have no hope. That's the difference between Job of chapter 3 and Job of chapter 2 and Job of chapter 1. That's why when we get to the end, what is his answer? I used to know you by the hearing of the ears, but now I know you better. Now I know more of who you are and now I see you. At stake with Job is not. I want the good days back. At stake with Job is righteousness, his relationship with God. It's why it does not make sense. Verse 11, why did I not die? Verse 12, it's why was I bred for this misery? Verse 16, it's why was I not stillborn? Verse 20, if it was going to be, if life is going to be like this, then why have life? Verse 23, we haven't read that yet. Why is life given to a man whose way is hid, and whom God hath hedged him in? You want an irony? Remember how it begins? Remember how this book begins? Satan says, you got a hedge around him, I can't touch him. By the time you get to chapter 3, Job is saying, there's a hedge around me, I can't get out of this. You want the irony of all ironies? He's right. You know who gets him out? He can't get out. His only way to get out is death. Not God's. Somewhere, we know the picture of the smelting. Okay, you got to be in the furnace and fire gets hot and you scoop off the dross and come on, Justin, we know that. Job knows that too, but somewhere in the smelting, all he sees is the fire. C.S. Lewis would write this in his book of Grief Observed, and I think this fits for Job. Job's question here is, the righteous are supposed to have this way, and the wicked are supposed to have this way. How exactly are you running the universe? This does not make sense to the God I know. This does not fit. This book was written following the death of his wife. C.S. Lewis would write, we were promised sufferings. They were part of the program. We were even told, blessed are they that mourn. And I accepted it. I've got nothing that I haven't bargained for. Of course, it is different when the thing happens to oneself, not to others. And when it happens in reality, not in imagination. Not that I am in much danger of ceasing Where else do we learn of him? I'll give you another quote. There's only two this time. It comes from Johnny Erickson Tada. And we know, jumps into the sea, 17 years old. It's more shallow than she thought. Becomes a paraplegic. Okay, if we want someone who can, who we can understand asking why, well, this is what she would say about asking questions. For some odd reason, it comforted me to realize that God did not condemn me for plying him with questions, because I did. I didn't have to worry about insulting God for my outbursts in time of stress, in times of fear, and in times of pain. My despair wasn't going to shock him. God, according to the book of Job, is never threatened by our questions. So did I find answers for the deepest, darkest questions about life in total? Let me just say this too. That's one of the things that sticks out to me right here. Doug, when we read chapter 3, there's something in me. If there's something in me, if I was sitting beside Job, I would have wanted to say, Job, shh, don't say that. I would have wanted to correct him. I would have wanted to shut him up. I would have wanted to reprimand him. I would have wanted to tell him that there's no faith there. You're looking in the wrong place. Okay, but that doesn't happen until chapter 38. You know who's silent through all of this? Yeah, God's silent through all of this. This book is often talked about the patience of Job. You know what this book shows? The patience of our God. And that's what she's talking about here in this picture, in all of my struggle and my pain. It was comforting to me that he allowed me to share my pain with him, to bring it to the throne. So she says, so did I find answers for the deepest, darkest questions about my life in total paralysis? Took years, but just one. And it is enough. And here's her answer. Oh, the depths of the riches of the wisdom and the knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his judgments, and his paths are beyond my ability to trace out. They said, that doesn't make any sense. Well, that's because you and I haven't spent all those times talking to him like she did. Because that's where she grew. And that's what we begin to see right here in Job chapter 3. And we're going to get to see it as it goes on in the book again and again and again. No, Job's not sinning. Not taking this to God. He's sharing his emotion and his restlessness and his struggle. And where else should we take it? God does not jump in there and stop it. We got a few minutes, verse 20, and we're going to read the rest of the chapter. Wherefore is light given to him. And I really do read this, Doug, I really do read this like, okay, the curse is gone, the lament is gone. Now I just want to make sure you have nothing to say, because let me put the whipped cream on top of the sundae. And, because that's how I see this end coming on there. Wherefore is light given to him. Here's my conclusion. Wherefore is light given to him that is in misery, and life unto the bitter in soul, which long for death, but it cometh not. There's so many people who want to live. Why do you give life to the one who's just suffering and dig for it more than for hidden treasure? By the way, that's a good question. Answer it. Come on, somebody, answer it. Which rejoice exceedingly and are glad when they can find the grave. Why is light given to a man whose way is hid? Okay, there's light shown, but I can't see, and whom God hath hedged in. And even if I could, I can't go anywhere, for my sighing cometh before I eat. You want to know what my life is like? I can't even eat. All I want to do is moan and groan and hurt, and my roarings are poured out like the water. I'm screaming and crying in agony, and it's... For the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me. My life is like a nightmare, and that which I was afraid of is come unto me. I was not in safety, neither had I rest, neither was I quiet, yet trouble came. How am I going to end this quick? Let's try to just do this. I don't want to make snapshots, but let me give a couple thoughts of things that we can benefit from this passage. One is here. And I guess this is really just, there is no snapshot. That's this picture. Our faith is not two-dimensional. And by that I mean, it's not Job suffered, Job trusted, all's good. It's not that simple. Okay. Doug, read that chapter. Then tell me, Job suffered, Job trusted, all is good. Then tell me you want to try that on. It's not that simple. You know, it's not so simple as to just throw out one verse from Corinthians and boom, everything's supposed to be good. There is despair in suffering. There is. There is darkness in trials. James commends Job for his patience, for his endurance. But in his endurance, there's pain, there's despair, there's darkness, there's lack of understanding, there's lack of hope. He wrongly assumes God is gone. Maybe even God doesn't care. That is a far cry from the Christianity that's often painted that, you know, there should be rainbows and smiles and no pain and no darkness. Almost, we have to pretend. That's good. Pretend. We have to learn to lie. Lie with the face. I think that's hypocrisy. No, Brother Jeremy, you're wrong. You're wrong. You're simplifying it. You're pulling a CNN on me. I'm not saying you're supposed to lie. What I'm saying is, can you say that, Brother Bill? Yeah, I said that. We'll say with that. What I'm saying is that you lack faith, and there's the sin. If you didn't lack faith, there wouldn't be any pain and suffering and toil and turmoil. You know who you sound like? Job's friends. We'll meet them next week. Trials hurt. Christians are not supposed to be impervious to pain. Let me give you some. Elijah, chapter 19, chapter 20. Great victory. Jezebel says, by tomorrow you're going to be dead. He runs and he says, Lord, take my life away. It sounds similar, by the way. Or Moses, you know, the two prophets, Elijah and Moses, those are like two pretty big prophets. You know what Moses does in Numbers chapter 11? Lord, this is too much. I didn't birth all these people. I didn't give you all these people. You gave me all these people. This is too much. If this is the way it's going to be, kill me. Take this misery away. Those are two people pretty full of faith. Paul, I don't know if I gave you this. Paul, 2 Corinthians. Yeah. For we would not, brethren, have you ignorant of our trouble which came to us in Asia, that we were pressed out of measure, above strength, insomuch we despaired even life. Who wants to tell Paul, put on a happy face? I'm telling you, I'm kind of scared of Paul. Paul's kind of an in-your-face kind of guy. Definitely a Baptist. Where do we get the idea that despair and faith can't coexist? Have we never read the Psalms of Lament? Let me tell you, you really want to be, you read Psalm 88. Where it pretty much ends saying, my only relationships are darkness. God, why are you against me? Two thoughts. That's one. One, Doug, we shouldn't be running around singing rainbows and smiles. It's okay to show your burden because that's how you can get help bearing it. And the second thing is we have to do this. We have to keep in mind we serve a God who understands. And this is Hebrews chapter 4. And we're going to close right here. Eric, I just want to go through all of these. Okay, we'll just go through them quick. Seeing then that we have a great high priest that is passed into the heavens, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold fast our profession. For we have not an high priest which cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities. He feels my despair. He understands my darkness. Brother Bill, why did he have to live 3 decades?
You know, why didn't he just come forward, die on the cross? He could die for sin. Why did he have to live all that? He chose to, because you know what the blessing is mine that he lived all that. Because he lived that, he understands what I'm going through. I can take it to him and it makes sense. I'm not talking to a friend on the other side who's going to sit there and tell me what I don't need to know. Going to pile on even more. I can talk to someone who understands. But by the way, he does understand. See, lots of times we try to put ourselves in the place of Job. I just don't know why. We know why. We're not righteous like Job is. Remember how we talked about this is conditional? We want to start looking at Job, but we got to look at ourselves, and it's conditional. Live the righteous life first. Because sometimes we slap no why. There's sin in life. And we're protecting it and holding on to it. We have not a high priest which cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. Let us, therefore, come boldly unto the throne of grace, because there we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Now, we don't get there in this book till we get to the end. But we're going to remind ourselves right now, there's where we can find mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Justin, we tried to figure this out on our own. There's one answer. Why live? There's one way out. There's one relief. But we're Christians. That's not our way. Walk not in the flesh. We're supposed to walk in the Spirit. And that should lead us right there, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Now that clock's done. We close in a word of prayer.